Good evening and welcome to this week's Joko conversation. I am Brother Youssef, a member of the Joko. Happy to be here with you. Also a poet, a cultural worker, a professor, a cultural worker. And I am joined in this endeavor, this contribution we attempt to make with my partner and comrade, Tasha. Hi, Tasha.
Hi, Yusuf, and greetings, everybody. Yeah, here we are, and we're going to start in the way that we always do, acknowledging and bringing to the forefront of our thought and memory and therefore our energies, those folks in our personal lineage that have influenced us, and all of those folks that we know and don't know, the folks that have influenced the folks who have influenced us, and the aunts, the uncles, the um, uh, effective teachers, the all the folks that have influenced us to become people who take up the cause of uh, making the world safe space for humanity, right? Making the world um, a good place, making uh, humanity happy, making all sentient beings peaceful and happy. To have that in our forefront, right? In our life purpose um, is a luck of our life path, and we acknowledge that those energies of our personal lineage that have shaped us as people. We acknowledge that we are children of the African global family, and bring to the forefront those folks who have been large personalities in this uh, claiming of space for the good, space for um, the the thriving, the end of immiseration of the greater part of humanity, and certainly um, there are heroes of that in family lineage, and we acknowledge those in the African family lineage who have lent their vision, their creativity, their genius, their courage, their leadership, their martial skills, all of those things to um, assist in dismantling, constantly resisting, and rebuilding the world in uh, the image and interest of the best human beings, the best that we know that human beings can be. We always acknowledge that this work that we do in every way that we can, and constant building, even at our ripe ages, um, looking for the next way to contribute. Everything that we do thus far, we are doing at the hospitality of the original people of this so-called United States, these so-called Americas, and this so-called uh, New World land, right? This Turtle Island. And we know that we're doing that at the hospitality, doing this work at the hospitality of those ancestors, of those who are still holding and preserving their culture, their culture, reviving their languages, restoring land, restoring species, doing this incredible, vital, visionary work as the indigenous people of this place, of this Turtle Island. Um, because we came as captors. We are not the settlers. We are the captives of the settlers. I think I said captors. I didn't mean to say that. We are the captors. I said it again. The captives settlers.
Yes.
And so we know who we are in this work. We know where we fit. Um, and we celebrate that, right? We stand in clarity and on firm ground and thereby strengthen uh, the old and effective alliances. And that's
Hmm.
how we start, and that's what we have to say. Hello, everybody. And I believe we're here to talk about, right, this question that everybody's raising. So, what do we do now? What do we do? What do we do? So, we're
Right.
here to talk about how to seize the time.
Right. Precisely. Right. And and in our conversation, right, following, how to follow up last week, right, and this, considering this the slow crawl, right, to shooting war, in what already feels like, a civil war. Just that just isn't a shooting civil war, right? Or at least not, that isn't mostly a shooting civil war. Um, but this moment of a broken system, right? And really, when it's at its weakest, because all of this polarization, and the increased repression of the regime, um, all of its attempts at more muscular, foreign interventions are a sign of weakness, right? The shows of strength, reveal weakness, right? And so, if that being the case, right, this moment of rupture, which is the language that the Canadian Prime Minister used, um, and given the state of affairs within the United States, and again, and how polarized it is, and how a significant number of people, um, whatever their particular politics, are alienated from the system, feeling alienated by the system, including those who are in power now, right? I mean, the whole way these folks came to power is because so many people are feeling alienated by the, business as usual of the system, and that hardcore whatever 30%, Trump support, have already, um, through their actions, right, expressed their, lack of confidence in the old, liberal democratic order, right? Liberal with the small L, just post monarchical, processes and all of political modernity. So what do we do with that? Uh, right? The current regime is actually committed to breaking the system as it is, but breaking it in a way um, that shrinks the democratic possibilities. But it's still, it's just because they want the broken thing to go that way doesn't mean it has to go that way, right? So, what are folks doing to seize the time? Right? The question before us.
Mm-hmm. Um, and a couple of things that you said that rang bells in terms of the Civil War type aspect, the
Mm-hmm.
divide in values, as well as the
Mm-hmm.
sense of alienation that is and left behindedness and forgottenness and all of this
Mhm.
kind of folk
Mhm.
looking for what they've been looking for some decades now is is a freedom from immiseration, from
Right.
their dwindling economic stability. You know, where's the job? How am I going to keep these homes that were, bequeathed to my, I guess, grandparent generation,
Mhm.
essentially? And I'm thinking
Mhm.
as thinking in the position of white so-called middle class, that vague
Mhm. Mhm.
label that everybody assumes, category that everybody assumes they fit into, but doesn't have a
Right.
actual definition. Um, but yeah, the I'm thinking of, oh, who's the documentarian? Moore, Michael Moore,
Michael Moore.
and he
Mhm.
did. Yeah, I think it's Michael Moore, right? And he did the documentary so many years ago. I think it was his first documentary. I know you'll know the title; it'll come to mind if you don't know it immediately. But it was Somebody and Me, and it was talking
Roger.
about the Roger and
Roger
Me.
and
Thank
me. Yeah. Roger from
Roger and Me,
the Flint
and
auto industry.
yes, yes, and that the economic devastation, and that came out in the
Mhm.
80s, no, right?
Yes, exactly.
Early 80s,
Exactly.
right?
Yes, in the 80s. I can't remember
And so
early, mid, but yes.
80s, right? And so, um, and anyway, farm crisis in
Mhm.
the mid 70s, you know what I'm saying? So
And the
the
80s, right?
and
Because
the
there were the
80s,
Farm
I'm
Aid
thinking
concerts were in the 80s, right?
I'm thinking about mid 70s, and I don't want to get too tangential and too far away from the point I'm trying to make, but I'm thinking about that time frame because that was a time frame in which this sovereign citizen white
Mhm.
supremacist
Mhm.
discourse began to get spread to that population, and
Roger and
a
Me,
lot of folks were,
1989. 1989,
oh,
Roger
late
and Me.
90s, okay,
Mhm.
late 80s, okay.
Mhm.
Um, but anyway, the alienation, the uh,
Mhm.
uh, lack of security, lack of security,
Mhm. Mhm.
really being receptive to any candidate that's promising it, you know,
Right.
um, and so this theme of shrinking democratic space, as the term that I learned, democratic space, right? This shrinking democratic space. Where's my power, my ability to survive, my ability to, move about the cabin, so to speak. And the sell, with the progressive selling of the notion that um, the shrinking, or the selling of the notion currently, the offering now of this notion that shrinking democratic space is actually the answer, almost in a
Right.
mirror to what Reagan bringing out um, or through Reagan, the slogan being promoted, um, government is the problem. What is it? Government's not
Mhm.
the solution, it's the problem, or whatever that little
Is the
slogan is,
problem,
right?
right? Yes. And with the what are
And
the
so,
4 or 8, whatever, how many scariest words you should ever hear is "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." All that
and all
stuff,
of
right?
these things, all of that drama, right? But selling that idea now, they're
Selling
selling,
that idea, exactly,
and
exactly, and they needed to sell it because people had the
and
experience of the success of the New Deal, right? Flawed as it
absolutely,
was, right, and limited
and
as it was.
incomplete, right? Incomplete as
Hmm.
it was, folk understood that it was working in their lives,
And
and so there's
continues
been
to,
this,
right, through Social
so there,
Security and things.
absolutely, and folk are still, yeah, but don't touch my social security. That's still not a popular way to
Right,
describe, right,
right,
your political approach. But now, what are they're selling the notion that democracy itself is overrated, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
isn't really a democracy, and this is a what, a constitutional republic, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's all quite cynical. Really, I
Mm-hmm.
feel quite cynical in terms of somewhere between the cynic and the true believer. A bunch of self elites who recognized um, sometime back in the day, right? Somewhere in these 70s and 80s and whatever beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Powell memo. What is that time frame? I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But the
That was the
recognition,
70s, right? Early 70s.
okay,
The Powell memo was written, I believe,
okay. The recognition that there was a need to systematically
or the very
uh,
late 60s, but around that time.
yes, Reagan's governorship, right?
And
So the
Nixon's
need to,
presidency.
yes, the need to dumb down the population, the need to reverse on public education, to put it out
Mm-hmm.
of reach, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you systematically create a population that you can say,
Yeah,
this is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. And I have
right.
people look at you like you're crazy and begin to repeat that, right? So these all of these um real goals, right, to shrink uh again the power of the people. And so what is the civil war that is emerging, the two sides that are emerging, that the right has named? The war is on wokeness,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this wokeness that's actually bringing forward accurate narratives and people centered narratives, and a power to all the people narrative, right? Have this kind of thing. So it's really a kind of, it's a divide um between these two tendencies and these two sets of values and sets of goals. Um, and so, people are, as I've heard it said, choosing up sides. What seems to make sense, and a lot of people are choosing up this other side because they really don't get it. They really don't know no better. They really haven't heard in a better narrative, a more exposed.
Yeah, and some of
But
them are committed racist and all that too, right? I mean,
yeah, because I was actually
there are
thinking
true
about
believers, on
the true believers. Yes, not just
yeah,
cynics, right? The true believers,
there are true
absolutely. True
believers that
believers.
and
Mhm.
some of those folks you were talking about. I mean, actually, I think that's really important. That because it is right. It's the late '60s, the early '70s. Again, just what I was talking about last week, right? Um, the um, the signing of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. That yeah, these like posse comitatus sovereign citizenship groups begin to form, right? Post then, so late '60s, early '70s, and
Mhm.
since then, preparing for some kind of civil war or to embody their notions again of Minutemen and Don't Tread on Me, all this stuff, from that Trumpism over the last 10 years has only brought to the surface, right? That's all. That has the given them the political space, right, to be the mainstream, and they've been planting those seeds, um,
Mhm.
since then, and from all these various sectors, right? So these
Mhm.
kind of civil society, citizen, uh, government is untrustworthy, leading to one world government or some form of communism,
Mhm.
slow crawl. And why?
Mhm.
Because of these efforts, right, to to democratize the society, right, through um,
Mhm.
desegregation,
Mhm.
of all the various forms of desegregation and uh, uh, opening up of the society, right, to those who
Mhm.
have been marginal to administrative power, right, and access
Mhm.
and all the
Mhm.
things we know, including,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
the uh, the state subsidized higher education that worked so well for so long. Um, so that working class folks, a lot of whom were, veterans using their veteran, their GI bills.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Mhm.
going into college, state colleges, community colleges, junior colleges called at the time, state universities, with some of those New Deal values, often, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
not necessarily we're
Mhm.
talking about
Mhm.
people, who were socialists, democratic socialists,
Mhm.
communists, them too, though we know we're also talking
Mhm.
about, the McCarthyist period and all the efforts to purge the
Mhm.
union movements, the teaching ranks, the
Mhm.
cultural worker ranks, right, of,
Mhm.
socialist and communist and
Mhm.
marginalize that ideology. Yeah, we know, but nonetheless, right? Again, the popularity of the reforms of the New Deal, the reforms put in place by the Great Society, right? Which were
Mhm.
again only
Mhm.
reforms, and we know that
Yes.
imperial adventure drained those funds almost immediately, right? But still, to
Mhm.
see what that vision was and what it could be,
Mhm.
and was
Mhm.
popular enough, right? So
Mhm.
again, you got all these sectors, right? These like private citizen landowners, often, right, of owners of ranches and um, with the various kinds of sovereign citizen, or natural citizen as opposed to administrative, well, all that stuff, right? All ways of saying, again, only whites and if possible only white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are really eligible for citizenship, and all these others aren't real citizens. And then these various think tank sectors. You mentioned the education, so let me the attack on education and the dismantling of public education that really takes off with Reagan, but again is being theorized and planned already. And since you brought it up, let me again quote Professor Roger A. Freeman,
Mhm.
who did, I think, make this recommendation to then Governor Reagan and possibly
Mhm.
also then President Nixon, in
Mhm.
that period, 68 to 72. Um, Professor Roger A. Freeman of the Stanford Hoover Institute of War, Revolution, and Peace. And I don't know if that continues to be the name of the Hoover Institute, but the Hoover Institute at Stanford. Um, Quote, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat. That's dynamite. We must be selective," unquote.
Mhm. Mhm. So,
So the
mhm.
plan, right, from the foundation sector, this sort of private citizen,
Mhm.
civil society sector, and then
Mhm.
and then that religious sector, right, also. Um,
Mhm.
Well, I guess
Mhm.
they would fall under the foundation think tank sector, as I'm thinking about, the things like organizations like the Federalist Society, right, in the legal realm, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Um, Taking time in very, in very deliberate fashion,
Hmm.
to figure out strategies, for stomping out
Hmm.
this, for what counter revolutionary, counterinsurgency, counter,
Hmm.
progressive. you know, how to stomp out this big fire. How do we,
Mhm.
reassert this control? And so, try this, try that. This is
Mhm.
the goal. Try this, try that. How do we make it fit? And so
Try them all
now
together.
this try them all together, and retry and reapply tried and true
Mhm.
principles. And
Mhm.
with all of that effort, it's still not difficult. What they've got is control of resources. What they've got is, what they've been building assiduously is control over the information space, the media space, that,
Mhm.
understanding that
Mhm.
that's key, you know, uh, mass psychology, uh, 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 approaches and strategies and tactics, which should not sound like anything conspiratorial. No, everybody understands, who's the PR dude. My
Which PR?
brain is going. Freud's cousin.
Bernays. Talking
Thank
about
you,
Bernays.
Bernays. Bernays, yes. Um, there's no secret, um,
Mhm.
about PR techniques. There's no secret
Right.
about uh, uh, selling and creating markets for,
And
and people
creating
consume
narrative,
ideas, just
right?
like creating narrative and creating need, right? Creating need.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
all of these things go together. And so here we are, right, at this crescendo. And it feels as if, yes, there's this huge attempt to seize the moment um to flex all of this
Mhm.
wealth. And yet the people, because when you look at the people, they are a hodgepodge bunch of folk who have in common the understanding that they don't want their people power, whatever they perceive that to be. They don't want their people power shrunk, right? So some people are out there, no kings, no kings. Some people are out there with um, more clear political agendas and more specific uh, political targets, right? More
Mhm.
specific campaigns. But all those people are out there together, mixing it up, and they keep coming back, keep coming back. The crowds only get bigger. And not sure that that was part of the calculus, even though they've well understood that they are unpopular, right? Which makes all of these different coercive methods necessary. Um, but yeah, so how does the left uh, seize the time? What are some, in this volatile, chaotic, uh, anybody's game, in a sense, time, you know? Uh, how does the left seize the time? What you
That's
think?
a good question. I don't know because then something I've been thinking about this past week is, why isn't there like a united left front? There are all these, left parties, right? And why isn't there a united left front? And I mean, that's old, that's old news, right? Sectarianism on the left. And, the Democratic Socialists of America are too committed to the system, and the Socialist Workers
Hmm.
Party is too, I don't know, Trotskyist. And I'm guessing, I don't really know. But anyway,
Hmm.
all of that stuff, right? And that well, what seems right now, the inability, right, for a wide range of left parties, both those that are primary, that are class first left parties and
Hmm.
formations,
Hmm.
and those that are both our national liberation left, parties and formations, um, and all, in all the various ranges. I mean, in the moment, right? And given the moment, um,
Hmm.
what can the left as a body do, right? Or what can the left do to organize together and to um, to recognize what you just talked about, right? The general energy in the general population, really, that wants change. And again, this goes back to 2015 when it was clear that the two most popular candidates were the two outsiders, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And with more people really leaning towards Sanders in the kinds of change
Mm-hmm.
they want. And we know how the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party establishment undermined Sanders and then did it
Mm-hmm.
again in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just even the fact that so many Bernie supporters in 2016 therefore said, well, I'm going to vote for Trump because they did not want to vote for the same thing. And Trump was not the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, even if he had the R by his name, right? Because,
Absolutely.
so that's there. But people, they still prefer, when a
Yes.
polling shows, they still prefer something closer to the Sanders vision,
Yes.
as incomplete and imperfect as it may be, right? Um,
Yes.
People still prefer that, right? And there's
Mm-hmm.
really a lot of consensus about ending foreign intervention and all this other stuff, right? And then even though
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people are always making the calculation of if we end this, the United States ends its various kinds of foreign intervention and presence, and what that means for standard of life in the United States, and what people
Mm-hmm.
expect, because you're getting
Mm-hmm.
your coffee relatively cheap, actually, and your oil relatively cheap, and all these other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, right, that people still prefer that the money it takes to spend on these overseas adventures or maintaining
Mm-hmm.
these bases that circle the globe, and
Mm-hmm.
circle the globe both everywhere around the globe,
Okay.
be
Right.
that can be spent on the citizens, right? Spent on
Yeah.
the citizenry. So that's one thing I think about, right? The weakness of the left, and the inability of the left formations in the United States to follow the example of the French left, who at least
Mm-hmm.
put their differences down to block the election of fascists in their last elections,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and even if you are of the and I think a correct opinion that politics do not begin and end with electoral politics, nonetheless, right? Electoral politics is a front um, that we should be able to engage in, right? And so that's one thing
Mm-hmm.
I think, right? How can the left get
Mm-hmm.
itself to all these various forms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Formations get themselves together,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then uh, uh, some of the other things that are taking place, right? Um, you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the No Kings,
Mm-hmm.
um, groups like Indivisible, the 5051,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, etc., right? And all the various actions going on. The spontaneous action that has emerged out of necessity in all the various cities over the last year, that the federal government has increased its presence, right? Because again, ICE has been around for 20 years, right? More than 20
Mm-hmm.
years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we know has increased its presence and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the organic, resistance that emerged here, in Los Angeles, Southern California,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
everywhere else they've gone, right? Chicago, Washington, we can go down the list, and what we currently see in Minnesota and what we aren't seeing in Maine, right? I every now
Mhm.
and then get a
Mhm.
story from Maine.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not caught up on today's news, but I know that the media has been zeroed in on Minnesota, ignoring these other places where the ICE and HSI and Border Patrol are all still busy.
Mhm.
Okay, but when these, nonetheless, people are, they're in the street, they're protecting their neighbors, they're finding ways to resist, to delay,
Mhm.
going back to the Target boycott, right? And that's having effects. So all these various things. What the point I'm trying to get to is seizing the time means, even if you have a critique of these various actions, and they need critique, right? Because we always got to be in a process of self-criticism to keep
Mhm.
improving, right? See what works and what doesn't. But
Mhm.
folks, and particularly left folks, right?
Mhm.
Beyond progressive, right? Beyond progressive, beyond reformist, need to be out there at those events organizing, right?
Mhm.
How are we organizing?
Mhm.
Um, and then what other opportunities to organize, right?
Mhm.
There is a spontaneity, for example, there's a spontaneity to the actions in Minnesota, but people are also meeting to organize their actions, right? So organizing is happening. So
Mhm.
how do we keep it going?
Right.
And how do we show up in places where people are already organized, to offer some more political education, some more voices, right?
Yes.
Work with
Mhm.
groups that are already on the ground, that are in community already, right?
Mhm.
So that's one. That's
Mhm.
one. That's how we seize the time, and it's not. This is gradual. They
Mhm.
took 50 years to get into this position, right? And
Mhm.
we should not, we can't wait 50 years to
Mhm.
get, because we won't last that long. But
Mhm.
that, getting out there, getting engaged with folks. So there's an action tomorrow, right? A nationwide shutdown has been called. um, and there are some, and I've heard several, a couple of people say, yeah, but this isn't a general strike, right? A general strike takes more organizing and preparation, because it needs to be more than a 1 day thing, and all of that's true. And I think that's why the
Mhm.
organizers didn't call it a general strike, right? They called it a
Mhm.
national day shutdown, a national day of shutdown. And my understanding from some of the reporting is that in some ways it's, let's see who turns out, let's see what momentum we can get so we can move toward a general strike, right? So this is one of those steps along the way to a general strike, and that kind of action. These and what I started with, right, in terms of what seems to be an inability of left parties and left formations to co-align, um, going through the endorsements of this particular national shutdown day. You see a coalescing, right, of left formations of various types, right, from everything from socialist parties to uh, local clubs of the Democratic Party, right, progressive
Mhm.
wing of the Democratic Party. And that is what
Mhm.
it's going to take, right? A united left front. Um, and I challenge my leftist comrades, socialist comrades, communist comrades, anarchists, all the anti capitalists who want to go beyond reform, be out there organizing, make community with folks who are fed up, right? And don't know what the other alternatives are, as you know, you pointed out. Um, because that has been suppressed in education, even though teachers find ways to get it through, right? Um, which is why teachers in education are under attack because of those, because the working class narratives, the narratives of the marginalized have broken through. And you know what we have suffered in this country, just in terms of popular culture, and especially film and television. You know, I don't. I think that the chilling effects of McCarthyism in the entertainment industry still it's still with us, right? And it's just morphed in different kinds of ways, right? So that even when the Hollywood blacklist gets broken, um, you know, people there's still all the propaganda and CIA agenda and all, you know, the anti-communist, you know, storylines are still we're still being pumped out, right, and continue to be pumped out to the very day. So all these sectors, right, have have been arrayed against any kind of real left analysis, leftist, collectivist, socialist, democratic
Mm-hmm.
um, vision, and particularly a democratic vision that has a critique of capitalism and imperialism, um, colonialism, that upholds capitalist relations, and you know efforts to leave that behind, right? To dismantle those types of relations. Um, so you know that's one way people should be leftists in particular, right? Should be seizing the time, get on out there at these demonstrations and organize, share your literature, talk to people, talk to people at the local church that's organizing to resist ICE, right, and to offer sanctuary, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? How do we seize? What can we do to seize the time?
So yeah, I mean, um, much of what I'll say will overlap what you have said. Um, and uh, I was reminded of the Black August slogan. Was it study, train, fast? You know, it came
Mm-hmm,
to mind that way.
mm-hmm,
Um, uh, what network, as I was writing notes, um, uh, build networks, uh, educate, activate the building the strike muscle, building on the strike muscle, flexing that very important people power
mm-hmm,
model. Like you said, yeah, this doesn't have to be the end all. You know, these critiques. What is it? These zero sum critiques, these unnuanced critiques of starts toward, you know,
mm-hmm,
bigger, more, ever more impactful things. You know, are
mm-hmm.
really kind of they're a little superficial. You know, because it's incredibly significant that a shutdown day is happening tomorrow, and that the I think
Right.
that was definitely a win, building on Minnesota's momentum. You know, building on
Mm-hmm,
that, building on Minnesota's move, I should say, and the momentum gathered in their just resistance to that raw police state um, practice, right? That
right.
engaged in, practicing the police state tactics. And so, yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, that's incredibly important. And all of the creative ways that people have been, have come up with to gum up the machine, the gumming up the machine.
Right.
Some of the,
Yeah.
you know, there's something about that is not only effective, but
Yeah.
it's entertaining and clever and therefore attractive. You know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
entertaining,
Mhm.
clever, clearly, very clearly nonviolent. You know what I'm saying? Very
Right.
clearly, an articulate statement, pointed, targeted statement that invites inquiry. So yeah, that kind of those kinds of creative demonstrations, and people have. I was in a webinar, and this is probably 2 months ago or more, but the conversation was about
Mhm.
how to. It was about ice raid um, demonstration and how to create effective demonstrations, and just
Mhm.
incredibly creative and theatrical um, modes of demonstrations that were, that the folks were coming up with were just on
Mhm.
their own. And
Mhm.
I mean, going out on a little bit of a mystical limb here, perhaps, but I think that spirit of the unexpected, that spirit again of entertainment and cleverness and fun, and you know what I'm saying, and that
Mhm.
kind of drama, I think it's fresh, and it
Mhm.
catches people's attention
We
in a
have a
different kind of
visitor.
way.
Hi.
Hi.
We
Hi,
are
Jahir. How you doing, sweetness?
we are we are
Hey.
actually live.
Yes, we
With
are.
Joko.
Grandkids.
So yes, great grandson has decided you can have the apple. Yeah, enjoy the
Yes,
apple.
the
So yes, we had
sweetie
a little
pie.
visit from Jahir, the future we're trying to secure.
That's right. Securing the
The
future for, hey, have a happy, thriving life. Let us
yes,
thrive as
yes,
human
that's right.
beings, right?
But
So
you were
we're
saying
doing,
though, go ahead.
yes, thinking of people's theater, thinking about how effective political
Yeah.
pop-up people's in the right people's theater,
Mm-hmm.
notwithstanding those actual
Mm-hmm.
institutions, that were born out of resistance in and that are born out of resistance. I mean, that's not unique. That's something that is a staple of resisting this elite force for maintaining the status quo, maintaining control, and the power of coercion and violence, and all of
Mm-hmm.
we know, and so all of these are, but these are things that um, are perhaps uh, as of yet underutilized. People are doing a lot of pop-ups, and they're doing, like we just did, the curb pop-up. People's
Yeah,
Mic just did the
yeah,
curb pop-up.
that's curbside festival. It's funny. I was thinking about
Yes,
that earlier today. Yes.
yes, that would be really potent about now. That'd
Mhm.
be really
And that's
popular. Just
and these are the type. Yeah, all these types of things, right, are happening. Right?
yeah, and well, and spreading. Then if they're happening much more than I'm aware, spreading, magnifying,
Yeah, because
magnifying
that's
those
the
things.
thing.
You know,
Yeah, they are happening. They're not covered, right? There's except social media,
hmm
right? I mean, what again, that's citizen to
right,
citizen type thing.
which is
Um,
good and
yes,
effective,
it
and
is.
absolutely, because people have got to be turning away in droves from legacy media. People
Yeah,
are
they are.
on social media. So that's an important space to
Mhm.
again find clever
Yeah,
ways
it's
to.
only, people my age and older, right, that are still checking the legacy media, right, which I do, right, but partly because of my age, right, I do, along with these
It's
other sources, right.
so that, yeah, so I mean the spaces are there, and then the physical space, physical space,
Mm-hmm,
the real stuff. If
mm-hmm,
we're in LA, so if the Hebrew Israelites can get on the corner, you know other
mm-hmm,
folk can get on corners,
mm-hmm.
and
Right, exactly.
attract even more
Mm-hmm.
positive attention, and so creating that kind of space,
So
putting
I
that
would
under
expect,
that.
for example, I would expect the Revolutionary Communist Party to be at whatever action is happening in Los Angeles tomorrow and other cities, right? Out there with
Uh-huh.
their papers,
Mm-hmm.
talking to people, right? What, etc.
Yeah.
Can I tell
Yeah.
you about another action I just heard about?
Can I finish my
Hmm.
spiel, or do you want to insert
No,
something
go
right
ahead.
now?
Finish your spiel.
Okay. So but yeah, these kinds of theatrical and exploring that fully, theatrical and creative ways to deliver all of this, and to whether it's activating and building the strike muscle, um, and or spreading information, building networks, right, as people are um, building networks to protect their neighbors, right, and in terms of making sure people don't necessarily have to go out of their homes to get necessities. People are doing grocery delivery networks and other kinds of mutual aid networks, and people are doing mutual aid networks to support their houseless neighbors and all of those kinds of things. It's an opportunity to build and reinforce um, that solidarity economy, and to build mutual aid networks that will mean other kinds of things. People are going to start doing community watches. That is very likely to grow. Community, and are already certainly doing, and as you say, become more organized. Certainly doing citizen journalism and ice watches, or that's already happening. So that's a great point to um, great at point at which to broaden this idea, make it transfer it into the larger idea of community control over all kinds of mechanisms of mediation, mechanisms of restorative justice, mechanisms of right neighbor networks. Reinforce those kinds of things, take the opportunity to of the moment, and because this is always also this place where people are having all kinds of questions. There's a lot of discussion energy opening up, questioning energy, open energy. um, Again, always engaging those family networks and having those discussions with family members. And my last piece, the educate, educate, educate. I feel like one of the most important things to do at this point is to get past the Trump administration focus and connect dots to larger issues in accessible ways. So yes, that's the political education part, and specifically using, the administration, using the moment to to be able to make the specific statement. It's much bigger than the Trump moment. And even understanding all of the implications of the Trump moment, because a lot of folk are quite comfortable, still comfortable yet, that midterms are going to be a thing. And not that midterms aren't going to happen, that's not what I'm saying. But that is going to, he's just going to be voted out of office, and all of this will go away, right? To kind of understand the damage to infrastructure that's been done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and also to, again, saying that this requires more looking at the the what is it, the fecklessness, the famed fecklessness of the Democrats, um, really driving home a notion that this is a much deeper issue and than just right, these people currently in the administration, um, and that we have to go much further philosophically to have any kind of stability in a democratic space here. So those are my pieces.
So I just want, you were talking about people's creativity, and
Mm-hmm.
the ways they're resisting. And really, this isn't new. What's new is the place, the thing that, that action that people were doing at Home Depot to muck up things, right? Buying whatever, some little small thing, and everybody lining up to buy this thing that costs 99 cents and then immediately getting in the return line, right? And mucking up. So they did that at Target also, right? They've moved that to Target. I think since the Target, which is home based in Minnesota, and I think maybe even Minneapolis, but Minnesota for sure. And maybe you saw that arrest of two Target workers, both of whom
Mm-hmm.
were citizens,
Mm-hmm.
and Target with nothing to say or do about it, right? And who are already feeling it because of the boycott, around their acquiescence on DEI, um,
Mm-hmm.
and really that boycott, being called by several marginalized communities to no longer shop at Target.
Mm-hmm.
So Target has become that um, a focus of that type action. Where and I do think it was in Minneapolis. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of folks went in and bought salt. Right, everybody bought a thing of salt and
Mm-hmm.
then immediately returned the salt. Right, so
Mm-hmm.
again, that same action, right, mucking up the the running of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in line with their little one thing of salt, and
Mm-hmm.
then back in line to return the salt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, a very creative kind of action that people have been taking. And I think that's more of what's going to happen, right? People are calling for, more and more people are calling for general strike and organizing for a general strike and are calling for boycotts, right? I understand some folks are trying to, compile, a list of various corporations that are in one way or another supporting the actions, of the current regime, and with a growing understanding of that history you just mentioned, um, or the system aspect of it, that it isn't Trump, right? I mean, it's every president, um, since um, since W. Bush, and created the Department of Homeland Security, and then ICE within it. And back then, when they came up with this Department of Homeland Security, that felt a little fascist to me then, right? Just this homeland language, right? Where you already had a national security council, and notions of national security. So, why do you need this language of homeland? Other than other than the way it appeals, right, to something emotional, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so all of them, right? Every president since George W. Bush, right, has deployed the Department of Homeland Security and ICE, in
Mhm.
these ways. Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
people are ready to be done with it. So, how are folks seizing the time um, to make demands of the political leaders? If they
Mhm.
want, if they have any hope, they meaning the ruling or the serving politicians, right?
Mhm.
If they want any hope of some kind of peaceful resolution or electoral revolution or administrative revolution resolution, um,
Mhm.
otherwise it's going to again be this slow crawl to shooting war because folks on the left are tired of getting tired of this stuff too.
Mhm.
And still that question I had from last week, even if all
Mhm.
that does happen and there is an election that maybe gives the Democratic Party Congress and both
Mhm.
houses, because again, this stuff is so unpopular, it puts the Senate in play, and they somehow decide to go ahead and impeach multiple
Mhm.
folks, multiple of
Mhm.
these criminals in this current regime. The
Mhm.
If all that happens, and even if there is some kind of successful insurgency within the current Democratic Party that
Mhm.
removes its centrist leadership, a
Mhm.
groundswell, um,
Mhm.
the same kind of groundswell that transformed the Republican Party into what it is now, this MAGA fascist
Mhm.
party cult type thing. Um,
Mhm.
where and why does it continue to be so successful? I mean, how many times have we heard that the Republican leadership, and I don't mean Trump, right, but these Republican members of Congress, and maybe also at the state levels, they're afraid of being primaried, right? They're afraid of their
Mhm.
base, right? It's the
Mhm.
base that they fear,
Mhm.
and it's the base
Mhm.
that Trump and
Mm.
his cohort, always threaten to sick on them. And we
Mhm.
already know, besides threats to primary them with even more Trumpist candidates,
Mhm.
we saw what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She began to receive death threats from
Mhm.
Trump supporters,
Mhm.
right? So we get,
Mhm.
but can the Democratic base make those kinds of demands? And I'm not talking about death threats, but can they put the
Mhm.
fear of the base into that Democratic leadership? But
Mhm.
all that being said, if they could do something like that, and they get the House,
Mhm.
and they get the Senate,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
impeach, and they try,
Mhm.
and etc.,
Mhm.
is that
Mhm.
is that MAGA base going to accept those results? Are they going to
Mhm.
accept the results of the election to begin with?
Mhm.
Would they
Mm.
accept the results of any impeachments, etc.?
Mhm.
How long before um, January 6th is just a
Yes.
precursor to
Right.
other actions, right?
Yes.
And that does remain to be seen, um,
Yes.
because again, those folks are seem committed to not accepting any election results that don't favor them, and are
Mhm.
immediately
Mhm.
prepared. Of course, we saw it in
Mhm.
2020. Um, uh, what's
Mhm.
her name from Arizona? Carrie Lake. Continuing to talk about a rigged race and a race she won.
Right.
It was just in the
Mhm.
news yesterday, right? That the FBI
Mhm.
raided the Fulton County, Georgia, um, voter registration offices, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so already,
Mhm.
they're
Yes.
setting the narrative to challenge any results um, that they don't like um, in this moment, right? So, that
Mhm.
all that remains to be seen. But those of
Mhm.
us who consider ourselves on the left, leftists, however we may identify, we need to be taking, why we call to seize the time. We need to be taking
Mhm.
advantage of this moment of um,
Mhm.
political instability, right? And absolute um, uh, uh, not displeasure, um, uh, uh,
Mhm.
loss of confidence in political leadership and the ordinary business as usual, um, the way things happen, right? And a lot of that has to do with how elections are run, all the money in it, who these politicians are beholden to. If they are not beholden to their constituencies, their the
Mhm.
the everyday people, workers, um,
Mhm.
and families, working class families, all the things that we need, um, and is really popular in the world.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
has been popular in the world, is still
Yeah.
popular in the world, and the entire world
Yeah.
has been subject to the same propaganda, right? That you need the private
Yes.
sector to make it work and all that, etc. Right? But are also
Yes.
prime. Everybody, folks are through. Folks are through in this world. Folks are through with
Yeah.
neoliberalism, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say,
Yeah.
they are through with capitalism.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, people are
Yeah.
done with it. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Or what I
Uh-huh.
guess it did work because it wasn't supposed to work for everybody. I mean, they were talking all that stuff,
Right.
but
That part. Yeah.
capitalism has always worked for the capitalist, right, and for the elites,
Right.
but
Right.
not the rest of us. So
Right. Right.
anyway, it's after 8.
That it
We've been
is.
at it for more than an hour, right? So we don't
That
have
we
to keep
have.
going. So you know, uh, I will just add real quick. We've got it up on the screen. If you are of a mind and have the ability, maybe you out there viewing this want to participate in tomorrow's national shutdown. What are folks calling for? No school, no work,
Mhm.
no shopping.
Mhm.
If you must shop, emergencies happen. Don't go to a corporate store. Go to your local neighborhood grocer or small independent store. Um,
Mhm.
I know that there are, many schools are planning walkouts, student walkouts, and I think that's great. And actually, I think it would be great if, the teachers walked out with them. Um, I would hope that a
Mhm.
lot of teachers are calling in and saying, I'm, calling in sick or whatever, right? Just,
Mhm.
but the other thing about the student walkout, I actually think, is it more effective if students just stay home so that does the school really
Mhm.
care if you walk out once they've taken roll, because they're going to get paid for
Right.
your attendance, right? So don't
Mhm.
go, don't give, so don't go, right?
Mhm.
don't don't give them the attendance to take roll and be able to submit um, to the state. Now, and that's tricky, right? Because you submit your attendance to be able to get to secure your funding and stuff. So if
Right.
you want to make sure your school gets its funding, okay, go take roll and then
Right.
walk out. But I'm just those are things to
Yeah.
consider, right? If
Yeah.
you're trying to make the school feel it, they feel it when you
Yeah.
aren't in the seats, right? When you don't show up. So
Yeah.
just something out there for folks to think about in terms of K through 12 if they, are planning to support the no school. And if you are
Mhm.
going to support
Mhm.
the shutdown and there are actions planned, right? It isn't just no school, no work, no shopping. There are actions planned around the country. I know here in Los Angeles,
Right.
right, there's a rally and um, march planned for tomorrow. So, those of you who might see this who are organizers, get out there and organize with the people who are going to be out there because they want to do something. They want to somehow put their bodies out there. Um, so, show up with them if you aren't already and begin organizing people,
Yes.
inviting people to organizing meetings, etc. Right? Let's take advantage of the moment. Seize the time, seize the energy, sow the seeds, build, as you were saying, right? Build community, build networks, these networks of all kinds. So I actually ended up saying more than I thought in that last program. So you got anything you want to
Well,
add?
yeah, the last thing I want to add is a what would amount to a reiteration of a book published about 10, almost 10 years ago that I'm very pleased to have discovered, Democracy in Chains. It's a great book for now. Um,
Yes, yes.
line of
Nancy McLean. Yeah.
predict right, the all of the predictive um, work that folks have been doing. You know what I'm saying? That people have been doing
Hmm.
predictive work for about this, before Trump's ascendancy. You know, I
Hmm.
certainly recognize it from my teenage and early adult
Hmm.
years, right? The
Hmm.
predictions looking at the trends toward feudal type organizations, the rise of private mercenary, uh, paramilitary outfit type things, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So folks have been looking at, it's like, okay, there's this, this slide to the right happening. There's this, this thing happening. So this is, I'm going to put the caption with this. This is by repute. Uh-oh, what happened here? Why is this not? I'm getting a strange thing here that maybe has to do with. Am I frozen?
No,
Am I frozen?
no, you are
Okay,
not.
let's.
You are not frozen. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. Um, so I'm putting the caption that goes with the book, with the title Democracy and Change. Okay. Um, the Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America. And, huge acclaim. Um, just from so many different corners, and a huge and telling outburst of critical disclaim from the right that Nancy McLean exposed, right? And,
Hmm.
in essence, she traces very, and it connects so many dots, right? uh,
Hmm.
from a line from uh, resisting Brown versus Board of Education to
Hmm.
Project 2025,
There's a
right?
through line all the way.
Uh, and a very specific genealogy of
Hmm.
players, of institutional infiltration, of developing and morphing these philosophies, having the capacity to PR and advertise and sell sloganized notions, through
Hmm.
the right time candidates to, so not going to try to tell the story, but just going to put it on up there and hope anybody that happens to watch our program or watch this particular program, if they haven't already, absolutely pick it up. It is uh, a book for now, right? It is absolutely a
Mhm.
book for this moment. So that's it. That's
Yeah, because it is the
my
history of
last
this
offering.
moment, right? It's the history of this
Yeah,
moment. It's how we
it's the
got here,
history.
and
It is,
um,
and precisely how we got here. Yeah.
and I know this has been on. I mean, they've been at it, but again, the it's been said many times, and what's her name? The YouTube channel, Leisha Miller, right? She always likes to say it. Reagan ruined everything, right? All
Yeah.
these the Reagan regime got
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff really going. I mean, it has its own prehistory, but it
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
again, since my youth, right, when Reagan became president, I've only seen this country be, move further and further right, moving toward fascism, and seeing the Republican Party in particular grow more and more extreme, and the Democratic Party moving further and further to the right, always responding, oh, we got to move to the center so we can get some of those back, right? And so we're way over here. What do they call it? The Overton window.
Mm-hmm.
The Reagan regime, the Reagan years, and Reagan Thatcher, and really, I like to put them
Yeah.
together. Reagan, Thatcher,
Mm-hmm.
Wojtyla,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Shifted us,
Mm-hmm.
and this way. But despite the propaganda, the negative propaganda that would say otherwise, capitalism is not democratic, and no truly capitalist enterprise organizes itself democratically, which is why we got somebody like Dr. Richard Wolff pushing for democracy at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to me, in my limited knowledge and understanding of the world, when I was introduced to the principles of socialism and communism, that seemed democratic, right? The move toward democracy, where
Because it
you can
is.
actually have one
Right.
person, one vote, and not
Yes.
$1, one vote, right? And not
Yes.
again an elite democracy, but a thorough and broad democracy of, by, and for the people, really. The people, all the
Mm-hmm.
people, not just the people who think they're the only people that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, I already just
That
got through
sounds like
saying
the
this a
last
little
word.
after. Yes, that's going to be last words. So, you want to say good night, Tasha?
Good night.
Good night, Tasha. And good night, folks. We really appreciate, you jumping on with us. Whenever you're watching this, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Please do all the things that we need you to do. Please subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already, Joko Collective channel. Please like this video, and please share the video. And we will be back next week, if not sooner, with more conversation, analysis, and all that good stuff. And I know I said this last week, I'm going to say it again this week. Maybe we'll have a guest. We're always wanting to interview people. Final words, the way I like to close, quoting Bob Marley. And I tell you the album every time so you can make sure you find it. The Natty Dread album. The song Revolution. Revelation reveals the truth. It takes a revolution to make a solution. Let's make a revolution, y'all.